So, about 10 years ago, a record came out that would eventually change the pop game. It was Animal by Kesha. At least for me, it changed the pop game. A lot of people say that it was pedestrian or something that was of its time, but Kesha's debut record was something special and actually the rise of many of the producers that we see today. Before I start, I want to say a few words. I am fully aware of Free Kesha, the whole Dr. Luke situation. I've covered Kim a couple of times on my channel. That doesn't make anything that Dr. Luke allegedly did any less. This is the only amount of time I'm going to dedicate to that whole topic, this entire retrospective. Without further ado, I think I'm just going to talk about the album track by track and also talk about how it impacted my life. I think this record is one of my favorite records from the entire 2010s decade. It was a very good start to 2010, essentially, and that whole decade that we just left behind. Prior to this record, Kesha had written about 200 demos before she whittled it down to 12 to 14 tracks, depending on which version of the CD you have, which is a really cool fun fact. Long before autotune became this whole played out trope that people use in their music, people really used it to great effect, and I always chalked up Kesha as someone who really knew how to use autotune to her advantage, essentially. Kesha had the attitude, the personality, the gravitas, and the confidence that you needed to be a star at this time. Persona was a huge aspect. It always is a huge aspect in pop, but at this time, you really had to break out of the pack and build your own identity, build your own fan base. In a sense, that's very different from what it's like now, almost. This album was launched very successfully when Tik Tok, the lead single, had become a hit at the time. It's a classic at this point. A lot of people criticized that she was very similar to Lady Gaga, which was understandable, but she very much distinguished herself with this record. So the first track is Your Love Is My Drug, which is one of the best tracks on this entire record. It was written by Kesha, her mom, and Joshua Coleman, and produced by Dr. Luke, obviously, Benny Blanco, who has become a big name in his own right over the years, and Ammo, who I'm also very familiar with. I think lyrically the song is constructed so well, and even if you just read the lyrics and you say, oh, this is a generic pop song, the delivery and the earnestness that Kesha brings forth on this track, it's infectious. It makes you fall in love with her. The bridge is one of the best things ever. Kesha knows how to build a bridge, and this entire record somewhat proves it. There are some songs with weaker bridges, but this bridge is iconic. Do you want to have a slumber party in my basement? Such an iconic lyric. Truly one of the best lyrics of the 2010s. The music video is really well done too. Then we get into Tik Tok. I don't know what I can really say about the song that anyone else hasn't said so far. I will say though that this song is the soundtrack to the disastrous year I had in 8th grade when everybody wanted to get drunk and do stupid adult things because, you know, you're in the 8th grade and you're like, I'm an adult now, I can think for myself. Fuck you, you're not. But anyway, it was just like, it's just so iconic. It's amazing. It's a archetypical pop song for the ages. The next track is Take It Off, and I have a really funny story. This was around the time I began to be a pop stan. I was a closeted 13-year-old who loved listening to pop records and didn't have anyone to share it with, so I was on ATRL. And I remember everybody had a post thing about how they didn't want the song to become a single, and I totally agreed because I wanted it to stay like a deep cut. And what do you know, it becomes a single and everybody's like singing it, and I was like, no, this is our song, you know? And it was the first experience I had as a stan where I went, oh, I'm a hipster, I knew about the song before you did. And like, not that that matters or anything, I just always found it funny. I love the song, it's great, but I really did get sick of it eventually once they started playing it on the radio all the time. It's really well constructed once again, archetypical pop, well written, well produced, great. The next track I actually did want to be a single because it was just infectious and I wish the world had heard it. It's called Kiss and Tell, and it's produced by Luke again and Max Martin. Michelle Back also wrote the song. Shellback would go on to work with Taylor Swift and just about everyone in the industry. Kiss and Tell is such a good song. I love it so much. I just thought it was so saucy back then when I was like a 13-year-old. She was like, oh, she called him a slut. Whoa, that's like really like great. Wow, I didn't have the words for it back then, but it was like very brave. One thing that I eventually realized growing up was like, oh wow, she really thought that she would have been the one to cheat in that relationship, so it wasn't really healthy to begin with. And then I ended up like kind of living out the song in real life, not with my own relationships, but my like roommate in college ended up like cheating on his girlfriend, who we both know, like we've both known each other for like forever. So I always thought it was like weird, and I ended up playing the song a lot during that time period because like honestly like it was just weird, and I thought it'd be funny to play the song in the background whenever they had fights because I live for the drama. Anyway, before I get off topic, what else I liked about the song was that it sounded like almost a wedding song. Like if you listen to the instrumental, it sounds like something that plays when someone walks down the aisle. So I always thought that that irony was there. Very smart. The next track is Steven, and I think I read somewhere that they had shot a music video for this just in case TikTok had flopped. This song and Backstabber, which is track 9, both got these really low budget videos just in case the song TikTok didn't take off or she had been like a smaller artist, because RCA does shady stuff like that. I love Steven. I think it's a great song. It's not produced by Dr. Luke. Interestingly enough, it was produced by David Gamson and Oliver Lieber, which is interesting. Like she really branched out and didn't work with him on that track. I like this track. It's fun. It's a nice subversion on the whole stalker girl thing. She really plays into it, but at the same time it's like satirical. I actually had a friend named Steven who I made this their ringtone, and they did not take kindly to that. The next track is Blah 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 featuring 303. Whatever happened to 303? Like where are they? I never followed up on that. Interestingly enough, Neon Hitch, who you may recognize from that one song that the Gym Class Heroes made back in 2012, co-wrote the song with Kesha, and it's produced by Blanco, so no Dr. Luke fingerprints on this track. You know, play it to your heart's content. This one is a wonderful subversion on rap songs being pointed towards women and objectifying women. Now she just wants to like do it with this guy, and this guy's like blah 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 and that stuff. Great track, very short. It's kind of funny that music nowadays is short in order to support streaming. Streaming wasn't big around this time, actually. I think most of music charted via sales or radio play. Like streaming wasn't a force back then, kiddies. And this song is actually very well made for streaming. Like had they released it now with maybe some cleaner production and different lyrics and maybe like just a few tweaks here and there, it'd be a really good streaming single, and I could see it being a hit on TikTok. Ironically enough, that app may or may not have been named after Kesha's song. I'm not sure. I've been trying to find a source on that, but really fun song. Definitely a highlight. I always found that it was weird that she put Hungover right after Blah Blah Blah, and I would always note that when I listened to the album way back when, like when it came out and I was like 13, like I'd be listening to Blah 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 and I'd be like, yeah, and then Hungover would come over and I'm all like, yo, I ain't even had a sip of alcohol yet, and I'm feeling this about someone I haven't met yet. Hungover is a ballad and a great highlight of Kesha's vocal abilities, even if they are soaked in auto-tune. I feel like a lot of people did not think that she had any depth, and this was a song that I would point people to if they ever were like, oh, Kesha's just a party chick. Hungover is a wonderful ballad about what happens after a party, and it's just such a good song. The next track is Party at a Rich Dude's House, which is a personal favorite of mine. It's wonderful. It's kind of derivative in that like she had a bunch of partying songs, and it's not the song that you'd put after Hungover. I mean, like if you were trying to tell a cohesive story, but it was 2010, no cohesive stories, just cohesive sounds and partying and the recession. Then we have Backstabber. I mentioned earlier it had its own little music video. I love this song because it's petty and it's dramatic and it's fun and it's not produced by Dr. Luke. I'm actually shook it wasn't. All these tracks sound like they were Luke. Backstabber, the bridge is wonderful. I love how specific it is. I'm pretty sure Jeannie's a real person and she's calling her out because Kesha really doesn't give any fuck. Backstabber in particular, I remember bonding with the song song because of petty middle school, high school drama. Blind is the next track, and I was never particularly fond of it. Not because it's a bad song per se, I just thought that it sounded a lot like Dancing with Tears in My Eyes, and I prefer that track a little bit more. Structurally, it's a little bit weaker than the other ballads, and it's probably the only track that I think is filler, but I'm pretty sure one of you guys are gonna say, no, Blind is my favorite track, or whatever, and I want to say that whatever experience you had tied to that song is totally valid, and your opinion is valid too, so, like, we all have different taste. Dinosaur is the next track, and I thought that it was gonna be a single at some point, because it'd have a really cool music video where Kesha turns down a bunch of old men. It's kind of funny now that everyone jokes about selling pictures of their feet to old guys, but like this song was like way ahead of its time. It's a really fun, choky song. It's not her best song lyrically, but in terms of hooks and catchiness, it definitely had the ability to be a single for its time. Okay, so I do have personal attachments to Dancing with Tears in My Eyes, and that's probably why I don't like Blind that much. I have actually danced with tears in my eyes to the song over dumb people who I don't even think about or can't even remember their names anymore. I just vaguely remember their faces, but this song I just really love a lot. I feel like it's almost like a blueprint for a lot of Dr. Luke inspired ballads, like, well, Dr. Luke's ballads, not Dr. Luke inspired. Dancing with Tears in My Eyes is Kesha at her most vulnerable, but in a way that isn't necessarily tied to a party. This entire album is about being at a party, I suppose, or just partying, but I always felt like the song kind of broke past that and really touched into the human core and experience of living in the 2010s. Like, this is like For Whom the Bell Tolls, but as like a pop song. Like Hemingway Wishes, you know, I really love this song a lot. And then Boots and Boys, great song, great track. I don't have much to say about it. It's not really my favorite, but it's a nice deviation in sound. And then the album rounds out with the title track Animal, which was written and produced by Greg Kurstin, which is really cool to see. I always had a soft spot for Animal. I thought that it was going to be a single at some point. There actually is a music video for the song if you dig far into the internet. I think it was released on iTunes. I believe it was one of the backup singles just in case TikTok didn't take off and they didn't choose to go with the other tracks. I think that it was a good thesis statement, and ultimately, I mean, it's a good track. It's not really one of her most memorable tracks, but it's a good album closer, I'll say that. All in all, 10 years after the fact, I think this is one of my favorite records. I definitely revisit it more than other records that were released around the time. Her contemporaries also delivered some great work, but as a debut record, looking back, this is very well done and very well produced and overall fun. It's a good introduction into who she is. You know, I keep on saying fun all the time, but that's what this record is. It doesn't take itself too seriously, even though there are some good deep cut moments here and there. And it's relatively cohesive for what it was. I don't think Kesha was trying to deliver us some like fancy gourmet meal like Melodrama or Lord's Pure Heroin. This is like a very warm, delicious bag of McDonald's French fries after you've had a night of puking your heart out on the dance floor or doing really dumb things that you'll probably regret in the morning. Thank God social media wasn't that big of a thing in 2010. Like, I swear to God, I did so many cringy things that I never want to ever see the light of day ever again. But, you know, everybody does that when they're in middle school. It doesn't really have as much to say as her later records would eventually go on to be like, but what it did say was, let's have some fun. This is me. This is who I am. This is a persona. This is why I have the $sign. I'm a pop genius, but you'll find that out later. Let's just have fun. Great record, great time. Okay, thanks everyone for listening. I can't believe I spoke about Kesha's album for more than 15 minutes. I probably would have gone off for an hour if I was using a podcast format. I am contemplating actually just, doing a podcast at this point, just because I feel like my better thoughts come up throughout the entire process. I mean, what you get in these videos is cut down from like roughly an hour of me rambling and sounding like a crazy person talking to himself. So there's that. If you like this, like and subscribe if you haven't. Follow my Instagram, follow my Twitter. I don't care what you do, just have fun. Okay, bye.